I actually really like following Anthony because we talk about a lot of the same things. And so, and I frankly agree with a lot of what he said there. And so this will be a little bit of a pretty close tie-in to what Anthony's team at Disney is working on and what GrayMeta is working on, and how you can think about AI and machine learning and kind of jump into it without being, how do you say, all in and going for broke on AI, because to Anthony's point, it's just not there yet. So one of the things I do believe is you can get double-digit improvements from an ROI today with machine learning and AI. This picture of a kid and a robot holding hands. My wife has this Skynet view of AI, and that it's going to change the world, and the robot's going to take over, and human extinction is soon following. I like to think of it as Jarvis, where it's more doing the analysis, the thinking, figuring out where the points of data are and align, and then allowing humans to make those thoughtful decisions and get more based in decision making and judgment calls versus research and analytics. So you all know it's changing. The consumption of video is changing radically. The video growth is huge. My children don't know what broadcast television is. They're 8 and 11. They watch this crazy show on YouTube every morning called Good Mythical Morning. Literally guys that are sitting around grinding up different meats and tasting them in blenders, but that's what they watch. They do not watch TV anymore. Everything is on the web, and that means two things. Content is growing rapidly, and the demographic and how people are watching and consuming is changing radically. And so 80% of consumption is video on the internet. For GrayMeta, we're in M&E for sure. We were born in M&E, but we're also in other markets where video is growing radically, like law enforcement, like medical, and they have been struggling with the same challenge of massive amounts of data. The downside for those folks is they don't have the history of M&E, where you have the systems, you have the thinking, you have the people that understand data and video in data. And so we're trying to solve that problem for other markets at GrayMeta as well. Change is how we're thinking about this. And I'll be honest, I come from outside of M&E before coming to GrayMeta. But honestly, it's not different in M&E than anywhere else. Siloed data in facilities with human capital, everybody moving to the cloud, hoping the cloud's going to solve every problem on the planet, and it just, frankly, it doesn't, but it's a great shift. And now comes machine learning. And so most people are in this state where you're in a siloed world of data on-prem. You have a lot of humans doing a lot of work, all good work, by the way. You've got a whole faction trying to move everything into a cloud that has its own baggage and concerns. And now everybody's coming saying the machine learning is going to solve your problems and your world will become simple and you're going to save hundreds and hundreds of bodies as you go down that path. I think there's a couple things to take away from this. Siloed data is a reality. It's not going away in the next 5 years. It's probably not going away in the next 10 years. On-prem is a reality. As much as we would love everything in the cloud, there is data that will always reside on-prem, at least for the medium term. I think the thing that people overlook is human capital. And I love what Anthony's doing with the product at Disney, because he's changing the work for his people. The next generation of workers aren't going to want to sit around and do what the last decade and 2 decades of people will do. Their expectation is different. Their expectation is you will have modern technology. You will have simple workflows that allow them to do their job effectively and, again, get to that judgment versus research point in their workflow faster and more efficiently, because that's what they care about. And if you don't solve for that problem, you will lose people. You will not be able to get good quality talent with that next generation of worker. The cloud services absolutely save you tons of money and save you time and energy and auto deployments and auto scaling. It enables things like platforms to be built, platforms that are abstracted and allow you to, again, move from vendor to vendor. One of the things we do at GrayMeta is we go after best of breed. We're solving that problem so we can pick and choose exactly who we want to use for AI. And there's the Googles and the Microsofts of the world, but there's also very small startups that don't have a lot behind them, but actually have really good, really inventive technology that solves some of the problems that Anthony actually talked about. They're getting smarter with their networks, and because they're narrowly focused, they solve those problems really well. The cloud services can help enable those AI and cognitive platforms to come into the fray without a large expense and without a large amount of work if it's built the right way. So how are we doing this at GrayMeta? Just a quick example. We see it as two kind of silos, if you will. There's the compliance world where you have distribution, regulatory, all the things that your teams have to be compliant with. And if you're not compliant, you're gonna get fined, you're gonna get in trouble, and frankly, you'll be out of business. And then there's the next wave of search, recommendation, discovery. When we started at GrayMeta, I think Anthony described this to a T. We were a search engine on top of metadata. That's exactly what we were. And this was 10 months ago. We thought about what we were doing and we realized that's just not enough. And so we've shifted our focus around this ability to solve for compliance, improve the experience and the workflow with machine learning and AI in that compliance bucket of work that just has to get done. And then leveraging that data and that learning to drive better search, better recommendation, and better discovery for all your channels. That's hard to do. And it's honestly, the technology isn't there and ready to get it done to a quality level that makes sense on the compliance side. I would argue on the recommendation side and the discovery side, you have a bit more of a window to be less accurate and less exact because the audience is more forgiving with technology than they were even a decade ago. So you get into this zone of protector versus predator. And in my mind, this protector is that person that wants to keep the old. The mindset is keep the old. We have to do it this way. It's worked this way for 10 years. We don't need to get into the new. If we get into the new, we're gonna have to change everything we know. And we don't want to do that because there's high risk. The predator are companies that are coming in and doing it. They don't have 10, 20, 30 years of baggage. They're coming up with new ways to distribute content, gain viewers, gain users of their content, and they're moving into that market, and you've already seen that happening. I liken this to the shipping container, which is an example I use all the time. There's a lot of people don't realize the story with the shipping container where a guy in the 1920s came up with this idea. He was on a dock and he said, there's gotta be a better way to ship goods. And he came up with this rectangle box to ship. It took about 30 years before he actually built the box. But when he built the box, shipping costs went from $2 to 19 cents a ton, overnight. It fundamentally changed the world. It changed how we distribute things globally. It eliminated jobs, by the way. That is going to happen with AI and machine learning. Jobs will be eliminated. People's value will change in the workforce because of the technology. You have to embrace that. Eventually it will come. I think the difference between the container story that took 30 years to get to production and AI and machine learning is it's moving so much faster. It's moving faster, and the next generation of folks that are out there, the millennials, actually are embracing it. They want it to move faster. They're not pushing back against it. So you have to balance that protector versus predator and kind of lean into the change, if you will, and embrace it a bit. Doesn't mean you have to go for broke. It doesn't mean you have to rip out your entire organization to do that, but you have to start to get started. So we're going to play this video. I thought this was kind of funny. I think it really summarizes where AI is right now. We need volume, though.
Give up, you cannot do it back in. Give up, tune in and slam the door. You do not care what you're saying. Let us very angry. Cold never bothered me.
So this is real speech to text from a large vendor that I won't name on the stage here. And the reality is it got a lot of it right. It got a lot of it wrong. And that was a pretty clean tape. And you see the metrics with things like Watson, Microsoft, Google, 94% accuracy. In fact, Watson and Microsoft have both come out and said they're as accurate as a human. I think the reality is if you're watching an interview of a person in front of a camera with zero distractions, it's pretty darn good. But even there, it does hiccup a bit. And honestly, 94% just isn't good enough for some of the things you have to solve for. The reality, though, is there's a lot of money in this being invested in making it better. It gets better almost every month. We use Watson, we use Google Speech, and we use Microsoft Speech to Text. They all get better almost every month. We see the results, we measure the results. And so it's not something that's changing over the course of years, it's changing over the course of weeks. And that's something to just remember and keep your eye on. A lot of investment going into this space. It still doesn't have to be perfect, though, to get benefit. And again, Anthony talked about this. You can gain from machine learning today. You just have to be thoughtful about how you do it. And in the case with this, you can get 30, 40% benefit gain from automated speech to text. It's going to get a lot of it right. The reality is you're going to have to curate that content. One of the things we've shifted to is the ability to curate. And the ability to curate to your taxonomy. The taxonomy is critical, and not just in M&E, across all industries and markets. Everybody has a taxonomy. And so the ability to train based on your taxonomy and train within the flow. A lot of solutions out there and a lot of people that are building things in a silo. The reality is, at GrayMeta, we've built that training into the flow. So as the users are curating their content, it's feeding back into all those AI providers and making it better. We're also feeding the taxonomy in. And one of the things that Microsoft and Google have told us is that taxonomy data is incredibly valuable. And it helps them get smarter and better, and they're getting better understanding the taxonomy of a generation, of an industry, of a place in the world. And us sending the data to them is what's going to drive that. It also allows you the ability to negotiate that cost down, because it is quite expensive in some cases. But when you're adding back and helping to train, what we've found with those vendors is they're willing to give a bit back and help drive that benefit to the platform of theirs through our machine learning and contributive data. And you cannot underestimate the amount of data you all have. You have huge amounts of data that they can benefit from, because right now it's based on the internet and public data, and it's just not good enough to get to the levels of quality they want and you want. So what are the big opportunities? For me, this is really simple. It really is that simple. It's time, it's cost, it's quality and control. You can save time today with machine learning. Just with some of the automation around objects and faces and speech, OCR, logos across the video, finding those things you just have to find, even at a 40 or 50% accuracy rate, it's going to save you time and energy, assuming you've built a clean workflow. You can't just plug machine learning and AI into your world and expect to get benefit. You have to think about the workflow holistically, or else you won't see any of those returns. From a cost perspective, it just gets down to what are you paying versus what can you get from a machine. And it's a hard thing to measure sometimes. Some of it's clear cut, some of it's very vague and very mushy, and you're honestly just going to have to try it and learn through it. The other side is quality. Quality is huge, which is why the human factor is going to be there for a long time. I agree 100% with Anthony. There's going to be human factor there. The thinking and the way to think about it is, how do you leverage humans to make the machine quality better, and how do you manage machines to make the human quality better? It is a circle, and you have to think about it that way. And again, it ties back to your workflows, which is critical. And then there's control. It feels like we're losing a little bit of control. Social is out there. People have taken control, if you will, of the content. You can actually take some of that control back, and the machine learning can help you. The sheer volume of data they can go through and think about and understand what people are viewing, what people want to view, how people are viewing, what's the content. I think my kids create as much content as they actually view online. That's a new source of content. There's so much data and so much content, you just can't hire enough bodies to get through it, and it's only growing. So leveraging machine and AI to actually understand the data, gain control of the viewership, and get more focused on that user and viewer is another easy way to use this technology. Easy in the sense that it's available. Again, there has to be a very thoughtful approach when you implement it, or else you'll find yourself just in a secondary sea of data that makes no sense, which you obviously don't want to be in. So again, a lot of opportunities. Think about the workflow. Think about it, think about it, think about it. If you're looking at a platform or you're building a platform like Anthony did, You have to think about technology that's smart and it's not monolithic. Everything we build is in microservices architecture because it has to be highly flexible. And you have to expose it with APIs. And you have to be willing to give data back as well as get data from if you're going to take advantage of AI and machine learning. If you think this is a one-sided flow, you're never going to realize the value that you can get from AI and machine learning. So you got to keep that perspective when you're either building or buying your platform.